I'll start out just reading very briefly. And again, I just want to say this was sort of like my dream panel, and I can't believe Noreen was just like, what would your dream be? And I was like, this is it. and then it happened, and I just kind of can't, I feel very lucky that this came true and that they came from the West Coast and whatever. It means a lot to me, and thank you, Noreen, for making it happen, and the Center for Fiction as well. Okay, I'll read very quickly. I sort of play diary roulette these days when I read. I just like open it up, and so September 5th is where we ended up today. And this makes sense because I know there are some Columbia people in the audience. Today I went to the Columbia Library for the first time in 4 months. Despite my regular absences, I have 2 spots I consider permanently mine. Both are located in a catwalk. Both are desks separated from other desks by tall bookshelves. In the bookshelves of the first spot, where I am today, is a series of large bronze volumes called Germanstick. Best I can tell, I do not speak German. This is a who's who in Germany, scanning the years 1960 to 2007, after which the library's subscription ran out or nobody was anybody in Germany anymore. There is a book called Shadows in the Attic, which I thought might be a V.C. Andrews title. I would have so much respect for the Columbia University Library if it could count V.C. Andrews among its holdings. And I should actually asterisk there and say that the librarian from Columbia contacted me on my Facebook page and was like, we do have V.C. But Shadows in the Attic is, quote, a guide to British supernatural fiction from 1820 to 1950. According to this book, one of the enduring themes of supernatural fiction is, quote, the little people, which I did not know, but which explains Murakami's 1Q84 to me a bit better. There are characters in the novel called the little people. Shadows in the Attic is useful for other reasons as well. It is highly recommended by me as a source for character names and story titles. The following is a list of real authors who, depending on their spiritual disposition, may haunt you from beyond the grave if you repurpose their names for use on fictional characters. Oliver Onions, Harrington Hex, pseudonym for Eden Philpotts, Ernest R. Suffling, Nina Toy, Alan Upward, Weatherby Chesney, pseudonym for C.J. Cutliff Hind, John Globe, W.P. Drury. Here are some excellent book and story titles that, if appropriated for reuse, may come with the same risk. The Persecution Chalice, A Carnation for an Old Man. In the Cliffland of the Dane, Another Little Heath Hound. Uncle Phil on TV, A Blue Pantomime, A House Which Was Rent-Free, A Weird Deal Aziz, A Strange Christmas Game, The Carpet with 100 Eyes, The Haunted Physician, The Case of the Thing That Whimpered, Jorkins Borrows Another Whiskey. I've stolen names and I've stolen titles. 2 at this point. I intend to steal more. I will at a future point steal the title of this book from my daughter. We will be at lunch following a visit to an Egyptian museum in Berlin. We will have bought a book on hieroglyphics. We will be trying to learn the picture letters, one of which is based on a drawing of folded cloth. Folded clock, my daughter will ask. Folded cloth, I'll correct, and then I'll pickpocket her accident.
I just LOL'd in real life as I did when I originally read that passage. And I kind of think of my book as sort of like the shadow book to Heidi's, because Heidi's is an actual diary, and my book is about a diary that I do not extract anywhere in the book. My book is also not funny and likable. But I have an afterword that I sort of somewhat self-consciously appended, in which I am funny and likable. But I'm not going to read from that. I'm going to read from the beginning of the book, and it just sets out the premise of the book, the purpose of it. I started keeping a diary 25 years ago. It's 800,000 words long. I didn't want to lose anything. That was my main problem. I couldn't face the end of the day without a record of everything that had ever happened. I wrote about myself so I wouldn't become paralyzed by rumination, so I could stop thinking about what had happened and be done with it. More than that, I wrote so I could say I was truly paying attention. Experience in itself wasn't enough. The diary was my defense against waking up at the end of my life and realizing I'd missed it. Imagining life without the diary, even 1 week without it, spurred a panic that I might as well be dead. The trouble was that I failed to record so much. I'd write about a few moments, but the surrounding time, there was so much of it. So much apparent nothing I ignored. that I treated as empty time between the memorable moments. Despite my continuous effort in public, in private, in the middle of the night, and in moving vehicles, I knew I couldn't replicate my whole life in language. I knew that most of it would follow my body into oblivion. From the beginning, I knew the diary wasn't working, but I couldn't stop writing. I couldn't think of any other way to avoid getting lost in time. Hypergraphia, the overwhelming urge to write. Graphomania, the obsessive impulse to write. Look up the famous cases if you're interested. Nothing about them ever helped me with my problem. I often prefer writers' diaries to their work written intentionally for publication. It's as if I want the information without the obstacles of style or form. But of course, all writing possesses style and form, and in good writing, they aren't obstacles. A friend said, I want to write sentences that seem as if no one wrote them. The goal being the creation of a pure delivery system without the distraction of a style. The goal being a form no one notices, the creation of what seems like pure feeling, not of what seems like a vehicle for a feeling. Language is pure experience, pure memory. I too wanted to achieve that impossible effect. And I'll stop there.
All right. This night is feeling very good to me. I'm very glad to be here. You all can hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, great. All right, so in our speed reading thing, okay, I'm going to read a little bit from the Argonauts and just from near the beginning, and it goes like this. So not long ago, a friend came over to our house and pulled down a mug for coffee, a mug that was a gift from my mother. It's one of those mugs you can purchase online from Snapfish with the photo of your choice emblazoned on it. I was horrified when I received it, but it's the biggest mug we own, so we keep it around in case someone's in the mood for a trough of warm milk or something. Wow, my friend said, filling it up. I've never seen anything so heteronormative in all my life. The photo on the mug depicts my family and me all dressed up to go to the Nutcracker at Christmas time, a ritual that was important to my mother when I was a little girl and that we have revived now that there are children in my life. In the photo, I'm 7 months pregnant with what will become Aggie, wearing a high ponytail and leopard print dress. Harry and his son are wearing matching dark suits, looking dashing. We're standing in front of the mantle at my mother's house, which has monogrammed stockings hanging from it. We look happy. But what about it is the essence of heteronormativity? That my mother made the mug on a bougie service like Snapfish? That we're clearly participating or acquiescing into participating in a long tradition of families being photographed at holiday time and holiday best? That my mother made me the mug in part to indicate that she recognizes and accepts my tribe as family. What about my pregnancy? Is that inherently heteronormative? Or is the presumed opposition of queerness and procreation, or to put a finer edge on it, maternity, more of a reactionary embrace of how things have shaken down for queers than the mark of some ontological truth? As more queers have kids, will the presumed opposition simply wither away? Will you miss it? Is there something inherently queer about pregnancy itself, insofar as it profoundly alters one's normal state and occasions a radical intimacy with and alienation from one's body? How can an experience so profoundly strange and wild and transformative also symbolize or enact the ultimate conformity? Or is this just another disqualification of anything tied too closely to the female animal from the privileged term, in this case, nonconformity or radicality? What about the fact that Harry's neither male nor female? I'm a special, a 2-for-1, his character Valentine explains in By Hook or By Crook. When or how do new kinship systems, this is a quote from Judith Butler, new kinship systems mime older nuclear family arrangements? And when or how do they radically recontextualize them in a way that contains a rethinking of kinship? How can you tell, or rather, who is to tell? Tell your girlfriend to find a different kid to play house with, your ex would say after we first moved in. To align oneself with the real while intimating that others are at play or approximate or an imitation can feel good. But any fixed claim on realness, especially when it is tied to an identity, also has a finger in psychosis. Lacan says, if a man who thinks he is a king is mad, A king who thinks he is a king is no less so. Perhaps this is why psychologist Winnicott's notion of feeling real is so moving to me. One can aspire to feel real. One can help others to feel real. One can oneself feel real, a feeling Winnicott describes as the collective primary sensation of aliveness, the aliveness of the body tissues and working of body functions, including the heart's action and breathing. For Winnicott, feeling real is not reactive to external stimuli, nor is it an identity. Feeling real is a sensation that spreads. Among other things, it makes one want to live.
I want to open with a general question that, for all of you, that I think is present in the pieces that you read, and it's really Heidi's question, slightly rephrased by me. But in this kind of open form, first-person nonfiction form that you're using, you proceed in each of these from the very specific and personal and almost mundane to bring in a whole range of larger meanings and subject matter. And for those of you who have read the Argonauts, these quotes are, you see the name along the side in a very interesting way. But the whole question of how, in a kind of open form, you integrate this larger world into the really specific is a really interesting one. And I wondered if you could speak about that a little bit.
Oh, me? Look at you guys. All right.
Yeah, you go.
Well,
You started with that coffee cup.
okay, great. I don't, I never really experienced the mundane as disassociated from larger, broader ideas of life. So it's not a binary that holds much sense for me. But I would say that in terms of the question about how to kind of perform or gather these things and you mentioned the marginal citations, is that I feel like I'm always trying to make a kind of a party of people talking together in certain nonfiction projects, and for me, the marginal citations here, which are just stolen from Roland Barthes, are they're a way to make the prose move faster, but they're also a way of kind of locating who's invited to the party by being able to scan the guest list very quickly.
Yeah. Heidi, do you want to say something? That's your question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm so interested in this, I gave Noreen some questions that I wanted to hear these guys answer. I guess I then have to answer them too, unfortunately. I chose the diary form, right, which to me felt very, very tight and very limiting in a way that paradoxically felt very freeing in the end, right? Because you're supposed to just be writing, and that sort of, that kind of springboard of today usually it was today I actually was saying, and I was saying that, all my entries begin with today I, and then someone was like, actually, and then I pointed out all these exceptions to that rule that I thought I had established and abided by. But yeah, so at least today was definitely the beginning. And there was something about that kind of like declaration of time and presence. I mean, I think it is all about, and I feel like both of the things you guys read, it's some sort of like how to have form, but how to have this kind of transparency too. And also I think how to feel very included in a party that maybe includes people you'll never know and people who are dead. I don't know, like somehow this notion of and how to kind of, for me I guess, try to use my daily life as, I mean, to be honest, kind of a social person that seems at odds with the writing life, and I wanted some way to have that be like my material, I guess, and to see that sort of daily act of living as kind of, I don't know, like research somehow that you could use, and then it does make you feel more present once you kind of like harness it in that way or lasso it in that way.
Mm-hmm. This idea of elevating the everyday as this kind of athletic practice has never really made sense to me. And you know, in the way that you're saying, you know, I'm a social person. How do I reconcile it with the idea of being a writer? Well, I mean, you're the kind of writer for whom that is just by definition interesting because it's your material. I'm a writer who's just never really been interested in anything outside, you know, these times. No, but in all seriousness, the kind of the quibble that Maggie has with the binary of serious writing versus personal writing is one that I've just, I've never really observed as being at all useful to the kind of writing that I wanted to make. And Maggie, there's actually, I know I'm quoting you, and I don't know the source. I don't know whether it was something you like tossed off, you know, while standing on top of a mountain, or whether I read it in print, or whether it's in your book. But you said, or in my dream. But everybody should be interested in the placenta. You know, speaking, of course, the idea that, you know, the diary form or the placenta. I mean, it's not literary. It's just, you know, bodily and female, but not everything is equally philosophically important and totally fascinating if you've never seen a placenta. I mean, it's just,
we did bring one.
Yeah.
With the wine, we'll have the placenta.
No, I mean, it's. I guess the point that I wanted to make is that being put in this position of having like knocked down binaries, that's not at all how it feels to me. It's not, and I'm not being falsely modest. I just don't get why I can't write about my diary and have that, you know, have to be sort of aggressively elevated to a literary state. Why can't that just be literature?
You know, at an event we had last week about the writer Elena Ferrante, there was a discussion of this word, smarginatura, which is a kind of made-up word. It means unmargining. The dissolving borders is, I think, how it's translated in the book, but literally it's unmargining, taking away the margins between things. And it seems as if that's something that's operative in all of these books, the kind of dissolving margins and the kind of things bleeding into each other in a certain way, but in another way there's a really interesting structural thing that's going on in all the books where they're very defined structural moments. So it's a little bit of a paradox, but I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
I mean, I actually ended up writing about this, I think it was in the Times Book Review last weekend, where I was actually talking specifically about the work that Maggie does and how it can appear to be a little bit just like, blah, like throw some shit on the page and it's all different and woo, you know? And how there is this real misunderstanding, I think, of like the really, really thorough, comprehensive constructedness of these pieces, right? That it isn't just like I threw some confetti in the air and then it landed and like, oh hey, look at that's how, right? And it's true that like some sort of like unlikely juxtapositions can sort of jar a reader into trying to fill in the blanks in an interesting way, but there is a point at which I feel like some writers are putting too much responsibility on the reader. Like, hey, it's all up to you. You want to make sense of this? You make sense of this. And I think that the kind of work that Maggie does and Sarah as well, it's like it's owning the fact that you are the writer, that you do have an artistic vision, that you do have a responsibility to the reader to challenge them, but also to be a bit of a guide at the same time.
Maggie?
Yeah, I don't know. I have a few thoughts. I mean, I guess when you were asking the question, I don't know. I mean, I'd be curious to know more about the context, about the translation of the word. Because I think in a book like The Argonauts, I mean, literally, because I was talking about like the party and the margins, but also the subject matter, even in what I read to you guys about kind of heteronormativity and what's up with those issues right now. That the book in some ways, thematically and hopefully formally too, has as a question, what's lost should we dissolve boundaries between centers and margins, and what's to be gained in so-called marginalized spaces, but what do you do in those marginalized spaces that part of the cost of their specificity can be violence, erasure, premature death. I mean, lots of different things. So I think that those are some of the thoughts about that, about what Heidi's talking about. I definitely think that I wish I still wrote in the kind of Bukowski-ish way I wrote in my youth, where I would just kind of but I would have nights like where I would really let it, just kind of let it spill. But I feel like I feel like a very obsessively, I feel like a very obsessively polishing each sentence kind of a writer, and really a kind of, I call myself in this book a serial minimalist, which I think Sarah actually might have more of the more to say about. But I think that it's so I don't have like the anxiety that I'm letting all hang out that I feel like my readers feel is not shared by me. But they've told me that they have some. But I don't know.
That's very interesting. Well, it is, your books seem very, very finely wrought to me, and also not limited by their rawness.
Mm-hmm.
That's also true of yours. Wait, what was I supposed to? Well, serial minimalism. Well, my books are getting progressively shorter, and it's taking me progressively, exponentially longer to write them. But I hope you don't mind, Maggie, my sharing something that we spoke about last night, right after our planes landed, and we miraculously checked in at the hotel at the same time. We were talking about these amazing new magazines that occasionally write and say we want to publish something by you, and Maggie, you said something like, I don't have things, it's just the one thing. And then it's a book, and then the book comes out, but there's no multifarity, there's no pile of things that I'm juggling, and I'm exactly the same. I can't even imagine having a sentence and not putting it in the book. That's okay, right?
Oh yeah, that's all good.
I'm sort of curious a little bit about, this is something that you brought up actually right before you read, is the issue of likability. I know this is such a big, awful topic on some levels, but I feel so heartbroken that you think your book is unlikable and not funny. I do. I feel that's super heartbreaking to me.
I have to, you finish. And then
No, that's all I'll have to say. I'll
you.
just say that.
Okay. And that's after the panel that you and I did in LA. Time?
Yes. Someone said to you, you're so unlikable?
No. Somebody, I think it's a moderator or somebody, I don't know, there was some gentle accusation of you just being likable. And you very conventionally sort of,
said, wait till you get to know me.
Specified, you answered the question rigorously and intellectually, totally all in way. And I've been thinking about likability ever since, because so when I consume culture, I can't not be thinking about it. And I have a friend who you can't stop thinking about it. You don't think just the concept about the confusions that people have, especially when people are making autobiographical work of any kind. Does that mean I like that person? Mm-hmm. Friends, or does that mean the person's pretending to be likable and they're truly horrible? And what about this story I heard? And what about that actor who seems really nice in interviews, but and then all of these ideas of constructed likability on social media that I'm afraid of, and I know we've talked about this a little bit. I can't even go near it, because what if I just get swept up and trying to be likable in yet another medium?
In a measurable medium. That's actually where it's really actually so, right? It's quantifiable, yeah.
No, but the things that you said about likability and how that is just necessarily part of representing the self, it just totally complicated things for me.
I can't remember what I said exactly.
I know, it was just a tossed up. It was one of those tossed up things, but.
I think about it a lot, and this is my first foray into nonfiction, where obviously, is it higher stakes or lower stakes for likability, right? Weirdly, I will say, because I have had a lot of people say of my narrators in novels that they are unlikable. And I actually once got into kind of a snitty state with an interviewer who just was going on and on about how much she hated my narrator. And like, how could you, how long did it take you to write this book? How could you have spent that much time with this unlikable woman, you know? And I finally just said,
interviewer a man?
no, it was a woman.
Huh.
No, it was a woman. And she finally said to me, and I finally said, you know, just again, snitty, I just said, well, then you probably wouldn't like hanging out with me, you know? But I felt like I took it so much more personally when people disliked my fictional narrators than if somebody disliked my non-fictional persona. Right? That doesn't make any sense.
No, you have a strong ego and you want to protect your...
Or I guess maybe what it is that it's like, oh, so you don't like what I made versus I don't like you. Somehow I don't like you is harder, is easier to take, right? That's just like, all right, well, sorry. I guess I can't do any better here, but what I make I could do better. I don't know, somehow, but then that gets into this whole notion of like the self you construct, which is, right, like whatever. We ended up talking about this in the other panel we were on, but you aren't presenting yourself in nonfiction. It's not yourself.
Right, but don't you think, I mean, the stakes are different, I think, for women writing in the first person and also for women writing nonfiction that is a constructed personal, you know, self in the world. I may be wrong, but it seems to me the stakes, if the stakes are slightly different for women, and the notion of likability comes up a lot more. It seems, not only in novels written by women, but I think in books like these as well, is a, you know, are you making someone uncomfortable? Seems, I read that a lot in reactions to the Argonauts in different places. Well, I was uncomfortable here, I was uncomfortable there, and it just seemed an odd notion to me as a way of, you know, reacting to a book, so.
Maybe that's why, because as you guys are talking, I'm thinking, wow, I've never in my life thought about likability, ever in my writing. Like, it just is not a concept that's flickered across my screen, so maybe that's why people are very uncomfortable. But yeah, no, it just doesn't, I mean, I don't know. I mean, to use, like, unfashionable terms, like, I just guess I feel like the truth or the curiosity or just whatever it is that's driving what I'm interested in the project is so hard to get to on its own. I can't imagine obstructing that journey with the question of likability. It just wouldn't occur to me. And I know we talked about this in another panel, but I don't actually ever think about, maybe it's because I come from poetry or something, but I don't, and actually Sarah does too, but I don't think about a constructed self as writing the books, or this book at any rate. I think it's me, and I think I'm talking, and I think of it in terms of maybe in poetic terms, like it has to have the sound or the rhythm, or the right, you know, word choice, or you know, kind of a Wittgensteinian impatience with cul-de-sacs of thought that are proving unproductive. But I think of that as a sound, not a character, I guess. Or a method, and if it has, I mean, you read Wittgenstein or something, and like he's got a character, right? Like it's this, you know, guy going like, how can my right hand give my left hand money? Like I don't know, you know. And it's like, I mean, it's a character, but what you're really feeling is he really is fucking needs to know if his right hand can give his left hand money, you know. Like there's a lot of drive in that, and I think, you know, and that's not like a fakery. That's like, I mean, actually, it was also Wittgenstein who said, like, my philosophy will be interesting to you if you share my problems. And I think, like, I feel like you feel kinship with people that you read, and you feel like your problems are shared. And I don't mean like, you know, I feel your pain. I mean like just a set of things that's very crucial to you. And that seems to me much more. I don't know. These are just questions that are more at stake for me than the character of the person at issue. You know.
Yeah, it's funny. I think maybe there's some notion of, like, I feel like the metaphor I frequently default to is like the worm pill and the dog food, you know? That somehow you're trying to like slip something in to somebody's food source that they won't necessarily notice, right? And I think about this a lot too, actually. Weirdly, I've thought about this a lot, maybe because I'm starting to see this kind of connection between my social, or just like my human self in the world style, and then like a writing style, and how much are those things connected, and how much do they speak to one another. And funnily, I feel like whenever I'm on a panel, like less so tonight actually, but I was on a panel the other day, where I just realized like, oh, I don't actually have a self necessarily that enters a panel. I go to a panel and I kind of like see what perspective is not being voiced, and then I voice that perspective. Like there's a weird way that I have this kind of like harmonic sense of how an event should go that less has to do with me and my prefixed sense of who I am and what I should do, and more about like an experience. And I realized that kind of slipperiness, you could call it, or maybe like chameleon-like self, I don't know, I feel like that's so deeply inbred in me from some kind of, I don't know, I'm more and more aware, I guess, of like, this sounds so like we're on the couch right now, but I'm more and more aware of sort of who I am and how I was taught to interact with the world, and how that manifests itself in myself who writes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel very much like so unlike you. I feel so much like, well, if I will not be heard, like the first obstacle to being heard is being liked, and then I will be heard, right? Which is fucked up, I'm sure, on some level, but weirdly, like, and I fully confess that, but like, I don't know how to get around that, or I've been really interrogating that, I guess is what I should say, and how much that has so much to do with, yeah, like I haven't been in therapy for like decades, but suddenly for the first time in decades, I'm starting to think about all of that family shit that I thought I had put to rest like 100,000 years ago and was so bored by. Yes.
Can I go back about 30 seconds to the way that you described your panel? And
Yes.
You're saying that you feel you have an ability to kind of look into the future of the panel before the panel itself gets there, and to know how to construct it.
Yeah.
That sounds to me like a long-form fiction writer talking about work, as opposed to the way, I mean, here comes a binary, but
Yeah.
the way, I mean, at least I feel this way, and you know, I think more so, no more so when I was writing poems than now when I write prose and sentences. I just feel like I'm in the moment, and I'm getting through that, and then there's going to be another one, and then I'm going to get through that. But I have no, I don't really see navigating in the car in the same way. Like my spouse is somebody who like knows, like there's some map and like understands the shapes of the roads and like gets it, and I'm just like, I just listen to the GPS and it's like I'm a fish. I'm like, okay, all right. Like my short-term memory is like 4 seconds, and I have I don't know. It's just that I've never been interested in like trying to develop that skill.
That's so interesting. I mean, because
Is
I
that
have to
a
say, I
poetry
have like, well, maybe it's a poetry thing. I don't know. I will say that I have like I'm mostly a future inhabitor, right? I mean, like, and I feel like that what that means is that I'm totally paranoid all the time. Like, I am. And I was actually joking with my friend beforehand. She was like, I am so aggressive. And I was like, well, I'm so paranoid. We should be a team. You can be the military and I'll be the intelligence. And we would just, right, we would rule the world. But I do, I feel like I don't know, I feel like I'm always in a kind of future mode.
Yeah, novels.
Right, maybe, do you think that's novels?
I imagine that's how novelists think. I mean.
But Sarah, it's interesting that the title of your book is Ongoingness.
Yes.
And that you're really playing a lot with the notion of time in the book, and about inhabiting the present and the inability to inhabit the present, and to move and to trying to hold the present, but there's a notion that you're always in the past or the future. And
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm sort of like hysterically listening to you try to articulate, because I don't know that I can necessarily articulate it without just reading from the book. But the idea of ongoingness in the book, I think the best articulation I make of it, or the clearest to me at this moment, is that I came to an awareness that everything was middle. That despite the fact that my life up to a certain point had seemed like a series of beginnings and endings, of things starting and then finishing and then a new thing starting, I came to one of the ways that my understanding and experience of time changed after I became a mother is that I realized so just physically and physiologically and deeply that it's all middle. It's all middle. And there was something deeply terrifying, but also deeply comforting about that. Like time isn't even a thing anymore. We're just. I hear it now.